Hello, John. Well, this is going to be filmed and recorded for the burgeoning Backstage podcast series that we have been doing now for about a year and a half. And we've got some very interesting people on there. There's people like Luke Mitchell, who founded Boomtown, Jill T, who's in the audience here, obviously from Black Deer, Sasha Law from Park Life. I could go on and I won't just give you the whole list, but do check it out. So, John, thanks for joining us today and taking part in the podcast. As I mentioned, really, when I was just introducing you there, obviously, you're just off the back of 2 days ago picking up the award, which is voted for by Festival Goers. So that's always a really nice one as Best Major Festival in the UK. So that's on the back of, 22 editions that you've overseen?
Well, it was fantastic because it's actually the 25th Isle of Wight Festival, because in 68, 69 and 70 there were 3. And in 1970 they had Jimi Hendrix and The Who, and 600,000 people, and I was there, which was incredible, and that's one of the reasons I helped restart the festival.
I was gonna come to that actually, about the you were visiting there in the 70s. It was 1970, I believe. You were 17 years old at that point.
Yes.
In terms of just on the back of that award this week, though, you've done that event now for, as you say, 22 editions. What do you think is behind the longevity of it and the success? Because it's not necessarily an obvious place to have a festival. Everyone's got to get all the punters have got to get on ferry. You've got to get all the equipment over to Isle of Wight. It's logistically a little bit more challenging than it is doing it in a stately home, say in on the mainland. So
yeah, I never would have restarted it if it wasn't called the Isle of Wight Festival. That's the truth. And when the lady at the Isle of Wight Council phoned up everybody in the music business in 2001 and asked them to restart the festival, because it got banned by an Act of Parliament for 32 years because the 600,000 people brought the island to a standstill. And when I asked Michael Levis or his guy Martin Elbon, what's it like to start a festival, they advised me I should just book Jules Holland and have a garden party. But really, I just went down. Nobody else was interested because they thought, why would a festival on an island work when people have to get there? You can only get there on a boat or a plane. You can't drive there. And really, I just went down for a laugh. It was a day out of the office, and I was sitting on the Red Funnel ferry looking at the sun glinting off the Solent. And I thought, fuck it, I book all my acts on other people's festivals. Why don't I have one? And I've come to realize after this period of time that to promote a festival is a combination of stupidity and arrogance, really, because I did it on behalf of the council the first year, and I booked Robert Plant and the Charlatans and Star Sailor. It's a one-day event. The girl in my office persuaded me to go, actually, because she came from the Isle of Wight, and she said she'd only ever seen tribute bands there. So when we were building the stage, everybody thought it was for tribute bands. And Robert Plant turns up, and he came up to me and he said, do you like Mexican disco? What the fuck's he talking about? So, of course I do. I thought, I want Led Zeppelin songs. So I promptly lost the council £500,000 on that event. So they then gave me all the rights to the festival, the name, the land, everything that went with it, because they didn't want the financial responsibility. So the next year, I booked Bryan Adams one night and Paul Weller the second night, and I lost myself £500,000, which is not a very nice feeling. But the third year, I booked David Bowie and The Who, and that was when it started to take off as a 3-day event. Because to get people to an island, you need them to have somewhere to stay for 3 or 4 days. You can't expect them to come in and out. It's not a day festival. Locals might come for the day, but people come from all over the UK to enjoy the island. We're lucky because the island is the sunniest place in the UK, if you look at all the things that go with it. It's just a great place to go to. I really enjoy it. But it is sheer... I don't know, everybody in this room knows how hard it is to run a festival. I mean, I'm a figurehead, Lewis Hamilton has 200 people to make a car go fast. We have lots of people to make a festival run properly. It's very nice to get awards, but awards don't sell tickets. Hard work sells tickets, and booking the right acts and making it a great experience for people. And, we on the pre-sale, we sold 20,000 tickets this year, which is proof that people enjoy coming and expect you to deliver a certain standard of entertainment, which is great. But I counted how many stages we had last year, and it went up to 15. I didn't know 2 of them existed, like in the woods. It's just people having a good time, really. You basically pay the groups you love twice as much as they would normally get and invite your mates to a field. That's what it boils down to.
And you're talking about, obviously, the big team behind you that brings it to life every year. As far as I'm aware, going back to like the early days of you reviving the event and taking huge financial risk and being pretty incredibly brave to kind of push through to that third event. I understand around that time that you met Caroline, who now runs the festival with you, your wife.
No, I didn't meet her for 3 or 4 years. It was when I fell out with the Isle of Wight Council, and they had a percentage of ticket sales, and they thought they had a percentage of the same tickets each day. So they had 3 times. So I wanted to argue this fact with them, and my lawyer had said I didn't have a leg to stand on, which was a bit sad. And I said, well, it's not worth me doing it if they're going to win it. So it was Live Nation at the time who advised me to get this outside lawyer, who this story was told at my wedding, actually, which I don't believe happened, but it's a good story. Where apparently I was on a conference call on Sunday morning. I was going to the airport in a taxi, and I said, I don't know, Terminal 5 to Johannesburg or whatever. And I was put on the phone to this posh woman, and apparently I got bored halfway through the conversation and said, call yourself a fucking lawyer. Have you ever read the contract? And this posh voice said down the phone to me, would it helped if you read it before you signed it? And I ended up marrying her 2 years later. She swore blind she'd never talk to me again. But then weirdly, even more weirdly, I was on MasterChef 3 months later because I had the Cause playing at Wembley Arena, and we judged the semi-final for MasterChef, and she recognized my voice on TV. She said I looked like one of the Bee Gees, which is about as insulting as you could be. And then finally, another 3 months later, the original lawyer who recommended her to me persuaded us both to go to her husband's 50th birthday party. But I didn't want to go because I was getting divorced. She was a single mother, and neither of us wanted to go because it's all couples and everybody's loved up, and you end up standing against the bar slagging everybody off. But somehow we got persuaded to go together, and that was it. And she'd never been to a festival, never knew what a festival was about, and now essentially she runs it. Marry a lawyer. It's very helpful.
I mean, being with a partner for a long time is quite challenging in itself. Running a festival together must be very challenging. So obviously that kind of, what is the question here? I suppose what I'm saying is it must prove that your relationship's pretty solid to be able to kind of go through staging a festival for 22 years.
Well, we definitely have differences of opinion. She's like a forensic scientist, and I'm always trying to, break the curfew, do extra things to make it more exciting for the audience. She's the legal person. I'm the person that tries to break the rules, and it comes in between somewhere. Sometimes I don't tell her certain things I've done. She discovers it and gets annoyed, but she's very, very, you need someone who knows what they're doing with contracts and security, the council. It works because we've got different roles on the whole thing.
So from one love affair to another, your love affair of the Isle of Wight, that started in the 1970, obviously the third edition of the original incarnation of the festival. And certainly I've kind of read about it and written about it. And, I think it was something like, as you said earlier, 600,000 people went to that event. The population, I believe, of the Isle of Wight is something like 145,000 now. And around that time was 100,000. What was the experience like going across on the ferry and to an event that had people like Hendrix playing and Leonard Cohen and huge artists and an incredible size audience?
Well, it was amazing because before that, I just listened to albums in my bedroom, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, everything that went. And I didn't realize till I went there were this many people that enjoyed the same thing that I enjoyed. And coming over the hill, and it was like the Battle of the Somme, seeing that many people. It was extraordinary. And, people always ask me about festivals and about music, and it gives you the opportunity to talk to anybody about anything because you're all sharing the same experience. It's not like a football match where half of them support one and the other half. Then, you have to be careful you're not going to get beaten up. It's like everybody has an opinion about music and everybody talks about it and enjoys it together. And music in the open air has a magic about it, which it doesn't have indoors, even when it rains. Mick Jagger says the audience are better when it rains, which I find hard to believe because they have to jump up and down more and keep themselves warm.
Yeah, interesting. And I mean, obviously, the whole festival industry has changed so much in the last, well, since 1970. But apart from the thrill of being in something so, 17 years old, the thrill of being somewhere with so many people and seeing such legendary artists. What was the actual physical experience of being there like when it came to experiencing, the facilities? I understand the toilets. From what I recall from a conversation I had with you years ago, you saw quite an unpleasant experience in terms of
Yeah, the loo was a trench with a scaffolding bar that you sat on. And I was standing there, I saw this guy fall backwards into the trench. It was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. He came out brown head to toe. I mean, it was just horrible, poor sod. And there were just so many, I was so unused to it all. It was extraordinary. You take away a little bit. It's very strange that everybody sat down all the time when groups were on. They didn't run to the front. When Jimi Hendrix was on, I literally walked down the front and he was as close as the audience are now. I suppose it was like being at a big scout camp, really. Everybody would share food, shelter, and it was really difficult going to the loo and coming back and trying to find your friend in the middle of that many people. But there was a joint experience. Everybody was enjoying it together. And the lineup was amazing when you look back on it.
So going back to the early days of your event, you mentioned there about losing a significant chunk of money for, well, it was the council the first year, your own money the second year. I mean, you must have had some doubts about whether to go a third year.
Well, the only way I survived is I actually have an agency and I book artists. So that funded the festival those first few years. And I don't know, it was just stupid belief, really. I just thought it would succeed because there had been something successful before. And it's just a passion. Everybody here has a passion. There's nothing better than thinking on a wet, windy Wednesday in December of a headline act and finally achieving booking them. And then in June, July, or August, seeing them in a field, entertaining tens of thousands of people. You think, I helped make that happen. It's an extraordinary feeling. I remember when I had the bad year when it rained. We got a month's worth of rain on the Thursday, and it brought the island to a standstill. And the lineup was Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and Pearl Jam, the American trilogy. And I helped push the cars out the car park on the Monday morning, and a bloke came up to me, and he goes, "You John Giddings?" And I said, "Yeah." I thought, "Oh God, yes." I thought he was going to whack me. And he said, "I just want to shake your hand for the best weekend I've ever had." And I burst out crying because it's such an emotional experience, the music and everything that goes with it. It's really enjoyable, really stressful, but the enjoyment at the end and to provide entertainment, it's a great crack. It's better than working for a living, really.
What advice would you? Because obviously, you said you've got the solo agency, which obviously very successful agency. You worked as an agent for years and worked with some of the biggest artists in the world. So you had that to kind of fall back on. But if I was 20 years younger or whatever, 25 years younger, and I was thinking about starting a festival, and I wanted to kind of come to you as someone that's been through it all, what advice would you give to a wannabe festival promoter?
Well, it's just so different now. When we started, there were 400 festivals. There's now 1,500. There's one down the end of your street every weekend. So it's a different world, and it's run by 2 or 3 big companies, Live Nation, AEG, who, have very good control of the market. But there's always an antithesis to the mainstream, and you've got to have a belief in what you're doing. You have to persuade people that you know what you're doing, which is the hardest thing, really. I mean, I was lucky because I was already in the music business, so people believed I would pay them. I always thought that if I got into financial trouble, the first people I'd knock were the VAT, second one was the PRS, but I always thought you should always pay the Groots. You have a reputation which you have to uphold. But you've got to have deep pockets. If you want to start doing a festival now, I'd say you've got to have money in the bank.
How would you say that the independent festivals, though, still play a really important role? I mean, obviously, we had a festival panel earlier on today, and we had a couple of people from indies, and we had a couple of people from the majors. And obviously, the conversation got to the point that there was being something like 70, 75 independent closures this year. But there's some new festivals coming through, big new festivals that are IEG, Superstrat, Live Nation are coming through, but also some really fresh concepts for independence. One of them is just for 25-year-olds and over, and it's starting at 5,000, but it's very much focused on the kind of very defined demographic that they're focusing on and trying to deliver something for that defined demographic, and which interests me. Well, how do you see it how do you see the future for smaller festivals that obviously start smaller, then maybe build up to the size of Isle of Wight? Do you feel like there is a future for smaller independent festivals?
I think you have to come up with something that's special, a special idea. Like Festival, for example, a food and drink one didn't exist when we started, and people Car Fest, things you can hang it on, and I think starting small is definitely the way forward, and creating a loyal band of followers who want to come and you've got to provide a good experience for them, because they'll never come back if it's crap. What was that festival on TV, the funny one where they took all that money off punters and
Fire Festival.
Yeah, Firefest. I mean, that's the complete. Or that Woodstock one. You
Yeah.
saw. I mean, that was tragic when the guy said, "Well, there's 3 rapes in any normal city on a weekend." It was horrendous. It was a really bad advert for the festival industry. I think you just have to have belief. You have to have people who want to work with you, and you have to deliver. It's 25 hours a day, and you have to it's like being a kid again, where you have a fort or a garage and you're putting all these pieces together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And that's where part of the enjoyment comes from, because, I mean, we book bands from past, present, and future because I'm old. So I know people I've had acts that played in 1970. We've had Caravan, Procol Harum, Judy Collins. And people say, who are they? They got no idea, Melanie. But I put them on because I like them and I think they're good music. And people are surprised by people from that era being actually quite good at what they're doing because they've never heard of them. It's a feeling, really, a belief.
And that, I mean, having the kind of the bravery really to kind of stick to it the way you did, even though you had that financial, no one's going to wants to throw £500,000 away again, anytime, whatever. And even if you've got an agency behind you, you don't want to throw the money away, the profit away. So there was obviously a huge amount of bravery that went on into carrying on there. But I remember you told me a funny story once about, after the Charlatans played and you were trying to build a festival up in those early days, and that you manipulated some of the imagery of the event at the time when you were trying to...
Yeah, well, I got Paul Weller to play because we had 7,500 people the first year for Robert Plant and the Charlatans. So I photoshopped the picture, doubled the audience to make it look busy, and presenting it to Paul Weller as a 20,000 capacity festival. It was just a con, really. But you've got to do things like that. You've got, go with the flow and make things happen. It's just, you've got to, I learnt it from the guy who originally got Bob Dylan to play the Isle of Wight, because he blagged him into it by presenting him with the history of the Isle of Wight and Alfred Lord Tennyson having a house there, which Bob was really interested in. You've got to think up an angle that will sell it to the group. I remember with Coldplay when they said at the Brits something essentially that made people think they were splitting up. And I went and knocked on their dressing room door and said, it's going to look bad if people think you're splitting up. Why don't you come and play the Isle of Wight Festival? And they came and played to tell people they were still a group together. It was luck, really. Luck to put it. And, with the Rolling Stones, I remember Jagger saying, he said, why did you book us? Because you'd sold out before we were booked. And I said, but if I get run over on Monday morning, at least I brought the Rolling Stones to the Isle of Wight. And this is an incredible story. The support act was Keane, and he said, can we go on before Keane? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you booked us after you'd sold out, so maybe people will leave. I said, what are you talking about? You're the Rolling Stones, for fuck's sake. It's like, it was incredible to hear that insecurity from someone so famous.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of why they do what they do and get up and achieve it.
But you've obviously got that reputation for looking after artists, as you said earlier on. It's pay that make sure that they're the priority to pay. I mean, I believe when the Stones played, you forked out an extra $100,000 to get their B stage that they would then only perform 3 songs on, but they were touring with it.
Yeah, well, I didn't want a B show. I wanted the whole show. So I paid $100,000 to put that B stage into the middle of the field. They played 3 acoustic songs. But it was, it's only money, isn't it? And half of it gets taken in tax if you pay it to yourself. So I justified it to myself by saying, well, it only cost me 50, really.
So obviously 22 editions, you must have had so many moments really in terms of key performances. I mean, the first one that springs to mind is David Bowie's last ever UK performance was like a closed one of the...
God, that was nearly one of the worst things I ever did. That was early days, the 3rd year. And I stupidly, because every 2 years there's some football championship. So I thought England were playing, so I thought I should put them on the main screens. And I put the first half on before David came on. And when I went to the dressing room, England were playing Germany. And when I went to the dressing room to get David Bowie, England were 1-0 up. And then when I got him to the stage, England were 2-1 down to Germany, and the audience were silent. I mean, it was unbearable. But if it hadn't been someone of the caliber of David Bowie, he just lifted them. It was extraordinary. And the chief of police came up to me and said, you're lucky they lost. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there would have been a riot if they'd won. Thanks for telling me afterwards. So I've never screened it on the main stage, but I still screen it in a separate field. We create a field of dreams because you don't want people leaving your event and buying somebody else's food and drink, because that's what helps finance the whole event.
So only about a month ago or so, there was an exhibition here, wasn't there, in the O2, which was celebrating the 25th edition of the Isle of Wight Festival. How important was that for you to sort of bring, was it Rayful, the co-founder, and the whole thing together?
Well, there's a museum on the island called Dimbalum Museum, which is the home of Julia Margaret Cameron, who's a Victorian photographer. And she had Alfred Lord Tennyson live next door, and he came and had his photo taken. Queen Victoria lived there. Lewis Carroll, Charles Dickens came down, had their photos. And the council were going to knock the museum down to build some new housing. And the bloke who was the original site manager at the original 1968 festival helped raise money to save it. So I became a trustee of that, because it's nice to do. And they had a room which had pictures from the early festivals. And I just thought, having done it for 20 years at the time, it'd be nice to have all the photos of all the years and the memorabilia that goes with it, which we've collected throughout time. So we put it in Dimbalum Museum to begin with. Then we moved it to Newport High Street as it got bigger and we were given more stuff. And kindly, the O2 gave us a place to do it for a month to celebrate the 25th anniversary. It was a great... And it's just another good fun thing to do, really, because I enjoy the artwork and everything else that goes with it. I mean, the guy who runs the fairground gave me a fairground horse decorated in festival colours. I mean, how cool is that?
It's brilliant. I mean, in terms of, obviously, you've taken Ray to your incarnation of the Isle of Wight Festival. So how has he reacted to kind of what you've done with the event that he started back in '68?
How's who reacted? The island?
No, the original founder of the festival back in '68. I believe you've taken him around the site on Isle of Wight Festival.
Oh, yeah. He
so I'm just wondering how
thinks it's Ray Falk, you mean?
Ray Falk, sorry.
Yeah, because I'm always asking him. I can never work out whether they made money or lost money, because if you look at the original film, they're all the bands are arguing over getting paid, and his brother always says that they lost money, but Ray is always a bit coy about it. But I think there was a lot of cash moving around on that original site. He's just pleased that someone else has taken up the baton and taken it on, really. And it's great to have him involved. We had his original desk and phone. And I mean, it's unbelievable that he flew to America, knocked on Bob Dylan's manager's door and persuaded him to come to the Isle of Wight, this poxy little island on the bottom of England, which lots of people haven't heard about. But then you get a group called Counting Crows come and they think it's been running since 1968. They don't know it's been stopped for 32 years. It's got an iconic name worldwide. I mean, with all due respect to somewhere like Hull or Cleethorpes, I wouldn't have attempted to start a festival there because I inherited the name and the heritage that went with it. And I'm very proud. I want to protect that for as long as I live. And it's great going there. And, it's an island that has elements of the past. It has history. It's got everything to enjoy yourself on.
What's the relationship now like with the islanders? Because obviously back then you had 600,000 people, as I've already said, going to an island where the population is of 100,000. And I understand that the island didn't look that pristine once those music fans left. So
lots of people waiting in people's gardens, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, essentially, it's the Isle of Wight Act, wasn't it? It banned festivals in the Isle of Wight for 32 years.
It banned gatherings of over 5,000 people overnight. So we're still subject to an Act of Parliament, which we breached left, right, and centre. You're recording this?
We are, yes.
No. The islanders really like it because it, economically, it brings over £10 million for that weekend to the island. And one of the taxi drivers said to me, it's like 4 New Year's Eves in a row. It helps keep because it's a tourist industry, the Isle of Wight. And the idea is to bring people early and they leave later because they get to enjoy what else is going on with Osborne House, Carriagebrook Castle, the beaches. It's not just all about the festival. It's about coming to the Isle of Wight and experiencing the Isle of Wight. And we have Sky TV broadcasts, and there's nothing better than when Jim Kerr from Simple Minds phones you up he's just done his gig in Australia and he's in his hotel room. He says, I've just seen your bloody festival on TV. And you think, isn't that great? Our festival is being broadcast in Australia. The Isle of Wight Festival was the Woodstock of Europe. And Glastonbury wouldn't exist if the Isle of Wight hadn't been stopped.
22 editions in. You've brought it back to life in style. And, it's winning awards and it's super popular. But what does the future hold for the event? Is it a case of just keeping going or do you have plans to evolve it? What's the plan?
I don't want to increase the capacity because I think people enjoy that, I mean, with all due respect to Glastonbury, 150,000 people is a lot of people moving around at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. I enjoy the intimacy of it, and I mean, we'll keep it going as long as people want to come, really. But I mean, I'm 71, so I've got to hand it over to somebody somewhere along the line. I can't keep doing it. And music is evolving and changing all the time. And young people want music that I don't even listen to. So you got to keep up with the times. But you've got to provide entertainment that's not just the music. You know, we've got this tent tea room where every 2 hours they clear it with an air raid sign and they usher everybody into this air raid shelter out the back, and you have Vera Lynn singing. I mean, it's just I discover things at my own event that entertain me.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you very much indeed, John. That's great to speak to you.
Thank you very much indeed.